Vanceboro, North Carolina, was actually a frustrating stop on my March 1977 phone trip. Part of the reason was because of this.
Operator?
Yes, can you tell me what exchanges I can call locally here?
What exchange?
Yeah, what can I call local from here?
Vanceboro, 244.
Is that it?
That's it.
In other words, there's no other town that I can reach from here?
Not local.
Not locally. Thank you.
Local.
Bye-bye.
That's right, just one town. Well, welcome to Carolina telephone territory. Now, what kind of switch is this? You dial a number, and then it makes some noises, and then it cuts through. I know that sound. That's an NX1 type sound. Yeah, that's an NX1 cut-through sound, but then these noises it makes before it cuts through, not quite like the NX1s I know. Another thing which is NX1-like is what happens when you dial your own number.
You have dialed a party on your line. Please hang up and allow sufficient time for the called party to answer. Then pick up your receiver. This is a recording. You have dialed a party on your line. Please hang up and allow...
And now, listen to this. I'm going to dial 72.
The telephone from which you are dialing is not equipped with the service you are attempting. If you desire the service, please contact your business office. This is a recording.
Custom calling features on a switch which sounds a bit like an NX1? Well, I later confirmed that this switch is an NX1-E, which is a processor-controlled crossbar switch. Now, in North America, the only other switch type in this class that I ever came across was the Northern Telecom SP1, found mostly in Canada. However, I understand that the UK had quite a few of their own variety of so-called electronic switches, which were really crossbar with a processor. Did you notice that when we dialed 72, it didn't wait to see if we were going to dial any more digits? It doesn't have to, because the local calling area consists solely of 244 numbers, the Vanceboro exchange. With no local calls beginning with 7 at all, there's no need to wait for more digits when a customer dials 72. If you're dialing 7 anything, you mean to use custom calling features. Now, I got that same recording on 72, 73, 74, and also on 76 and 77. Interestingly, on 7.5, I just got the vacant code recording right away. This may suggest that they didn't have long list speed calling. Here's 7.5 followed by 7.6.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. The telephone from which you are dialing is not equipped with the service you are attempting.
The vacant code recording is actually the vacant number recording, serving both purposes, and it is quite easy to get. The local translations in Vanceboro are built on a digit-by-digit basis, which is really more NX2-like than NX1-like. Here's what happens when you dial 3.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again.
I got the same thing dialing 4, 5, 6, 8, or 9. as well as on 75, 78, 79, and 70. Here's dialing 241.
We're sorry.
Now I'll dial 244, the local office code, followed by 1.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again.
Well, you get the idea. It's all digit by digit. This and the NX2 are the only crossbar offices I've ever seen that do translations that way. However, ESSs can do it too, so this being a processor-controlled switch, I guess it kind of makes sense. Now, when we dial 71, we get something that might be interesting. A second dial tone. Now, 71 is probably the code for non-subscription three-way calling, and this actually might work from this post-pay coin phone. So let's try dialing 71 followed by a working 244 number. And now here's 71 followed by 0.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected.
Oh well. So now let's dial a working Vanceboro number normally. And by the way, what follows is probably the world's only recording of an actual intra-office call being dialed in an NX1-E. Hope I'm wrong, but here goes. Let's take a good listen to those pulsing noises it made setting up the route to the phone line. That's quite different from the NX1-D pulsing we're all so familiar with. Now, this being an NX1, I wonder what the dial tone times out to. Well, I have a pretty good idea. So let's pick up the phone and let it time out, and while we're at it, let's count how many seconds the dial tone is going for. To do that, I will employ one of the best voices in the world, which I am superimposing over the tape, and that'll tell us how many seconds the dial tone ran for.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Well, we knew it would time out to either a reorder or a busy signal. This is an NX1. Now, here's a question. How long did the dial tone go before it timed out? Well, the answer seems obvious because we just counted it up at one number spoken every second, but we did something stupid which I think the programmer did too. It's supposed to be 20 seconds, and I'm sure the programmer, if you were to ask him, would say that it's a 20-second dial tone. But he did the functional equivalent of what I just did, starting with 1 at the beginning of the dial tone, and then incremented his counter 1 time per second until it got to 20. And of course, starting at 1 and ending at 20, you have 19 seconds in that space of time. Don't! Now, if you really want the dial tone to go on for 20 seconds and you're timing it in any way resembling what I'm talking about, you have to set your counter to 0 and then wait a second before you count 1.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
etc. And yes, the amount of time you can pause between dialing digits of a phone number is, you guessed it, 19 seconds, the industry standard.
Not.
There are other telltale signs that this is a processor-controlled switch, one of which I only discovered because a noisy train in the background required me to abandon a call to the ringback circuit. What's interesting here is that when I hang up in the middle of the audible ring that it plays, it holds my line for an entire second, and then plays more audible ringtone when I pick up again.
You have dialed a party on your line. Please hang up and allow sufficient time for the called party to answer. Then pick up your receiver. This is a recording.
Now, the amount of time I was on hook there is actually longer than the full duration of the normal tone that it plays. So it seems there was a certain duration of ringtone it was just determined to give me, and my hanging up in the middle of the process merely paused or reset that operation. This is not the behavior of analog-driven circuitry. Only software would cause something like that to happen. Another sign that software is involved is the time delay the NX1-E adds after the final digit is dialed out onto a trunk. No analog system ever added a delay after the final digit, since such a delay was not only unnecessary but potentially problematic. For example, if Hempstead crossbar tandem were to delay that way, the target office could go off hook before the cut-through, causing Hempstead to...
We're sorry, but because of a temporary equipment condition, your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try again? This is a recording. 5167. We're sorry.
But hey, with software, it's just too easy to write the code without thinking things through. First, dial the digit, then pause, then see if another digit is needed. If so, return to the top of the software loop to dial the next digit. Otherwise cut through after having paused needlessly. Well, it works for most purposes. But sometimes you'll get things like, from a Vanceboro payphone, the only example of outpulsing we have is in calling the service codes 112 through 114. Each of these goes through the same way. After I dial the last digit, we hear noises similar to those we heard when I called the operator, which is the NX1-E setting up the route through its own network. Then a flash from the outgoing trunk. Then we hear the final two digits of the service code being dialed out. Then the unnecessary time delay. And finally the cut-through. You'll hear that in some cases the operator will have already answered by the time that happens. Here's 112, which goes to an unanswered ring, perhaps a test board, followed by two calls to 113, and finally a brief call to 114, which I hang up on. By the way, sorry about the train. I know you came here to listen to the switching train, but this other kind of train got in the background there, and anyway.
Great persistence. Great persistence.
Now here's another sign of software which I would not have discovered had I not needed to reconstruct a part of the tape that had gotten glitched. It turns out that the time interval between the individual pulses of digits that Vanceboro dials out is exactly 100 milliseconds.
Not.
Okay, I lied. It's exactly 99 milliseconds.
Don't.
Well, at least he's consistent as a programmer. And by the way, I apologize for using something from the 1990s culture in presenting a recording of something from 1977. I actually looked for something more period-appropriate to use, but nothing works quite as well as... In any case, if the actual programmer of the NX1-E ever heard this presentation, his reaction would no doubt be,
Well, excuse me!
From here, all calls out of the office go over special trunks to New Bern, the toll center for this area. New Bern is a step toll center. There is an NX1-D in the same building, but it seems to be uninvolved in toll functions. At first, I thought I heard an NX1 noise here.
Operator?
But upon listening more closely, I think that's just a combination of a relay click like the one we heard calling the operator in Bellhaven, plus a rotary trunk select switch operating. When we dial 0 here, Vanceboro picks up a trunk to New Bern, lets it flash, and then connects us to the trunk without dialing anything. Then we wait several seconds, and finally something in New Bern times out and sends the call to the operator. This might be the same trunk group that's used for 1+ calling from home phones, so it bears investigation. First, here's what happens when you try to dial a 1+ call from here.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
As you can see, it goes to intercept after a total of 7 digits, including the 1. But we could try dialing 0, then waiting for Vanceboro to drop us onto the trunk, and then dialing a toll number. Ain't nothing happening here except trucks passing by in the background. We know my dialing did something because it didn't go to the operator after a few seconds. But what I was actually hoping for was to get a CAMA operator asking for my number so as to get onto the long-distance network. Well, maybe these trunks want a 1 dialed into them for some reason. Let's try dialing 0, and then, once we connect to the trunk, dialing a 1. Dialing a 1 onto that trunk triggered it to connect to the operator before the normal timeout. And as you saw, she can hold us up, too. So what we know so far is that dialing 0 puts us on a trunk which flashes and then eventually times out to the operator. On this trunk, dialing a 1 brings the operator immediately, and dialing a 10-digit number beginning with 212 ended up doing nothing at all. I also tried dialing 2 followed by a 3 on this trunk. That went to something. Perhaps the operator, perhaps directory assistance or something else, on the 3. Let's call into that trunk and just dial a 3 initially, and then if it doesn't do anything, I'll start dialing 1s. You know, the behavior of this trunk group seems a bit mysterious. We dialed 212 and 7 digits, and that went nowhere. We dialed 3111 and got a busy signal. And if you dial a 1, it goes right to the operator. Now, if there's some way to call long distance on this trunk, I'm not sure what to try now. But we actually do know one thing. This is not the same trunk group we were getting calling the service codes like 113. We know that because we've seen Vanceboro dialing a 1 there and not getting the operator right away. So let's turn our attention back to that other trunk group, the one the service codes go out on. Now, if you've heard the 1974 recordings of the Greenville NX1-E, you might have an idea of what I'm going to try to do. There actually is a way to try something with that service code trunk where 113 goes. Let me just review something about NX1s. In an NX1, if you flash when you're on the rego, which is the device that gives dial tone and stores your digits, you usually drop to the default busy or reorder. That includes flashing when the pulsing that sets up the route is going on. Let's flash right after dialing 113. Same thing, but if you wait until the trunk has been seized and then you flash before outpulsing begins, the rego will drop out, leaving you on the trunk with nothing dialed, and then you can dial whatever you want into the trunk. So let's try dialing 113, and then just as the trunk is being seized, we'll do a flash. That was the rego dropping and the service code trunk flashing. Let's see if this times out to the operator. Nope, here's a 3. Did you hear that? That was subtle, but there was a sound like a rotary switch operating in the background. Stroger automatic toll ticketing makes that sound. I'm dialing 311, which I expect will be a vacant code for New Bern's long-distance equipment.
Sorry, you're unable to complete your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording.
That sounded good. It paused, and then eventually connected us to a vacant code rather than a vacant number type recording. So I think we may have gotten into the toll equipment there. Now, we know that for directory assistance, Vanceboro dials 13 onto these same trunks, and that ends up going into part of the New Bern step without engaging the toll equipment. Let's try getting onto that trunk again by the same method, flashing just as it's seized. And then once we're on the trunk, we'll dial 10.
Sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number or try your call again. We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Okay, so that was the vacant number type recording, which we got by dialing a 0 right into the step selector, which is used for directory assistance, repair, etc. Note that we cut right into the recording upon dialing 0. On the previous call, there was a long pause after we dialed 311, suggesting that some sort of common control equipment was in operation. Now, this trunk group is probably one of those baffling multi-use trunk groups that Carolina Telephone likes to set up. Dialing a 1 puts you into the service code selector, while dialing 2 through 9 goes to the long-distance equipment. So now, shall we make the big escape from this pitifully tiny local calling area? We'll dial 113 and again flash just as the trunk is picked up. And this time we'll try dialing a 212 New York City number. I'll of course dial something which won't actually answer should we be fortunate enough to escape the toll restriction. This sounds promising.
number, please.
Why didn't I say something to the operator? Let me explain.
Your number, please.
Now, at first, that sounds like the operator really likes to spit out her P's, as in, your number, please.
Your number, please.
But that only happens the first time she says it. When she repeats herself, the P sound is normal.
Your number, please. Your number, please.
Here's another example of the same phenomenon.
Your number, please. Your number, please.
You know, I picked this tape up after almost 30 years of not thinking about this place, and this is one of the things, among others, that made it extremely perplexing to listen to. Or perhaps I should say, perplexing. Well, in fact, she's not really spitting her P's. What's going on here is that the trunk is going off hook right on the P sound of the word please, coincidentally, and that reverses the polarity of the phone line, this being a post-pay phone. Yes, you can't talk when the polarity's reversed. You have to put money in order to talk. This makes it impossible for me to tell her a number. That's why I didn't say anything. I couldn't. And yes, the trunk goes back on hook during the first impulse of the busy signal. Here's another example of the same thing. On this particular call, you can hear that rotary switch sound a bit louder. And this operator has a different speech cadence, so it's easier to hear the trunk going off hook, which in this case happens in the middle of the word please.
Your number, please. Your number, please.
Now this is just the noise that tells her a call has come in. There's no class of service tone to indicate that I'm at a coin phone. The problem here is that this post-pay coin phone cuts my mouthpiece off while the polarity's reversed. Now I doubt the operator will hear me, but let me try shouting to her through the earpiece.
Your number, please.
Hello?
Your number, please.
You know, sometimes you cross a bunch of hurdles only to end up defeated anyway. We tried dialing a toll number normally.
We're sorry.
We tried dialing on a 0 trunk. Ain't nothing happening here. We tried resetting a service code trunk and dialing on that, only to end up
Your number, please. Your number, please.
unable to talk to the operator. We tried shouting to her through the earpiece.
Hello?
Your number, please.
And now, I'm sorry to say, but we've reached the end of the road. There is just nothing left to try, with the possible exception of human engineering, which I really don't like to do. So, in the spirit of just going through the motions, let's drop onto the service code trunk using that technique again, dial a toll number, and this time deposit a coin to be able to give the operator our number. Now, this is not going to work because she's going to hear the coin tones. But let's do it anyway. It's not going to work.
Number, please.
Hello?
Your number, please.
Yeah, 244-9022.
So you're at a coin telephone and wouldn't be able to dial direct from a coin. You'd have to have the operator place your call for you.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I can have one call you back if you like, so you can receive credit for the dime you put in.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take care of that later.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, bye.
You know, that was really sweet, offering to have somebody call me back so that I didn't have to put in another coin. Of course, it was a quarter, not a dime. But anyway, that really warms my heart.
Not?
Yeah, right. Actually, the way I feel is... Don't! Yes, and if you don't like the way this thing's turning out, then...
Excuse me!
You know, the funny thing is that had I succeeded in defeating the toll restriction, I just would have called some non-working number in New York City to record for posterity that it was possible to do this, and then I would have gone on to the next town. Now, in this case, the next town is a Carolina telephone step on the way to the Elizabeth City area. I'm going to drive back to Greenville now, spend the night, then the next morning get up and head toward Elizabeth City, and the first stop along that way is Williamston, which is a Carolina telephone step with a tone plant that is really not very Carolina telephone sounding. It sounds more like some other independent company. Then after that is Windsor, a town whose ring is almost exclusively heard in Carolina telephone territory. So it's one that doesn't sound like it's from around here, followed by one that really does. That's next.